Okay, welcome to Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is all about decision structures. Like, why did I sign up for this course? Okay, maybe that was a bad example. So on page 111, they talk about the if statement, which is a single alternative. You know, and the example they kind of give is pretty good. I mean, they basically say, you know, is it cold outside? And if the answer is yes, you wear a coat. If not, you do nothing. So that's a single alternative. By the way, you guys have had programming logic and design, right? So most of this should be a review, right? Okay, good. So when you're comparing things like, is it cold outside? You're probably going to have some sort of a comparison operator, like is temperature less than whatever. And so there's a list of what they call relational operators. I don't necessarily call them relational operators. I call them comparison operators because it just makes a little bit more sense. So here they are. There's greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, equals, and not equals. Now, by the way, whenever there's a combination of symbols, the equals is always on the right-hand side. Okay? I'm just telling you. So that's an easy way to kind of look at that. So this next section is kind of sort of important, so you really should be paying attention. And that is, I want you to understand what is the opposite of each one of these things. Okay, so if I ask you, what is the opposite of greater than? Would you tell me less than? It's not. And you go, well, sure it is. You know, less than and greater than. Well, no, if I said, what was the opposite of greater than 5? And you said, less than 5. Well, then what about 5 itself? Okay. So the opposite of greater than is less than or equal to. The opposite of less than is greater than or equal to. The opposite of equals, that one's easy. Opposite of equals is not equals. Okay, this is important. All right? This is important. Shall I say that again? This is important. Okay, good. So, on page 117, they kind of give an example of some programming style. And sure, this kind of sort of makes sense, but since there's no curly braces involved, it kind of makes it look like that this commission rate and days off are all part of that, and they're not. So I always tell people, and it's going to be one of the rules that we're going to be using in the class, is that whenever you have an if statement, even if it's only one statement long, I still want you to use curly braces. Okay, so let's go here and build us a project. And I'm going to call this one Chapter 3 just for the heck of it. Seems like good names for these things. Anyway, the idea that adding extra curly braces, some people, I don't know, it's sort of like, oh, that's too much work. Like, no, it's not. Trust me, when you get to do this kind of stuff for a living, you really want everything to be consistent and portable, and you want to be able to switch between languages. So if I said if whatever, you know, temp is less than 50, and then I'm going to put in curly braces and say, you know, wear a coat. Okay, so I always put curly braces in here, even if technically it's not required. Okay, kind of makes sense? Good. So that programming style thing on page 117 is a good example of a problem that you could have solved if you do it my way. Okay. So kind of sort of moving on. The next one, well, no, let's don't get there yet. So comparing characters. Remember the character, the char data type, right? This might be a little confusing. For example, since these things are being compared to as if they were numbers and not letters, if I said is A less than B? Whoops, sorry. like that. Then I'm going to say something like system out println. Yes. Okay. So, and this will actually work the way you expect it to. Let me go ahead and put in something in here for temp. So my thing will work. It's 32 degrees outside. Okay, I'm going to run this. Okay. And it says, where are code? And yes. So A is less than B. You'd expect that, right? But here's where it gets a little confusing. What if I said A is less than capital B? Okay. Well, what is it now? I mean, okay. And it did not print yes. So what's happening behind the scenes is the letter A has a larger number than the capital B. So lowercase letters have higher numbers. I don't know. It's kind of weird. So just when you're comparing characters, just be aware that you're actually comparing their numeric value behind the scenes, and you may not be aware what their numeric values are. Okay. So the next one talks about the else if statement, and that kind of makes sense, right? This is just the dual alternative thing, right? You guys know what we're talking about. You know, if a number is whatever, then you so in our case, I'm just going to go back to here and say else and then say system out println no. Okay, so that's all that is. It's just two alternatives. You have the is it true alternative it says yes. If it's a false the false alternative, it's no. All right, so let's stop and think about what we're talking about. This thing in here is called an expression. So every if statement, and later on when we get to loops and stuff like that, every time you have something like this in parentheses for an if statement, it's just called an expression. And the expression is going to evaluate to true or false. No matter what you put in there, it's eventually going to evaluate to true or false. That's the only thing that the if statement actually knows how to do. The if statement knows how to say, is something true or something false. That's it. It doesn't know anything else. Okay? So, the dual alternative just basically says one of the paths is true and one of the paths is false. Okay. Kind of, I'm ready to move on because hopefully this is all just a review. Now, you can nest an if statement inside an if statement. For example, I can put all of this inside this if statement, right? It's no big deal, right? You can have an if statement inside an if statement. So, for example, you would only check to see if this happened inside here, like that. Ooh. Hey, this would be a perfect opportunity to clean things up. What was the keyboard thing? So doing it all from the keyboard, Control A, and then what was it? Alt Shift F. And ooh, isn't that pretty now? It lined everything up for me. Ooh, cool. Okay. So yes, you can have nested if statements. There's nothing special about this at all. You can have not if you using curly braces, which I'm requiring you to do in this course, then lining up the curly braces is kind of easy. This is how you keep out of trouble. Is you line up the else, the if, and the curly braces to make sure they all line up exactly right. And when I pasted this thing in there and it kind of went wonky, it was difficult to tell if I had it right. So now I can see I've got it right. Okay, so yes, those little curly braces come in handy. Okay. So again, there's nothing really magical about nesting an if statement inside another if statement. So there's another way you can do this. Instead of having now, let's imagine you had an if statement and then another nested if and another nested if and another nested if and another. So your indentation level is just going to go grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And so the writers of the system said, well, I'll tell you what, let's cut the guy a little bit of break. And let's fix it so you don't have to do all this indentation. with the third version, which is called the if-else-if statement. It's not really something new. It's just a programming style that kind of sort of does something. So for example, I'm going to go down to here, and I'm going to say something like, if, I guess I need to put a score, some sort of a score is equal to 88. And so I would say if score is, let's see, greater than or equal to 90, and then I would want to say, so this would be like, hooray, you made an A, like on a quiz or something. System.out. So you made an A, hooray. And then I could keep going, right? I could just say, well, else, if, then keep an indentation. Except I'm going to do it all in one line. It just makes it a little easier. So I'm going to say else, if, like this. And that way, what was supposed to have happened was it would have lined up for me. Oh. Sorry, I guess I have to keep typing before it does that. Score less than or equal to 80. Okay. And so now the indentation level does not increase. It just makes it a little easier to see. It's not really anything different than doing it up here with, with having an else and then another if and another else and another if. It's the same thing, except this one, I'm going to go in here and say, you made a B. And you can keep going, right? You can just say, so starting at the top of the range, this is what's called the range problem. The range problem means I have a range of numbers and I want to break them up into words. It could be something like temperature, where it's, cold, cool, warm, hot, right? Or in this case, it could be a score on a quiz and you want to determine what letter grade you got. Doesn't matter what it is. So it's called the range problem because you're trying to take a range of values and put them into separate little buckets. That's the idea. Take a range of values and put them in buckets. So I'm going to go ahead and continue this guy. And because I'm lazy, I'm going to copy this guy as my kind of like a prototype. And I'm going to go here and just put him in here a couple of times. Okay. All right. So this would be 70. This would be 60. And I don't actually need anything beyond 60. Now, once again, I'm going to do that little trick. I'm going to do Control A, Alt Shift F to make that thing scoot over a little bit. Cool. All right. Cool. So this would be you made a C. This would be you made a D. And if you were less than or greater than or equal to 50, well, can't I just stop here and say that anything beyond a D is also an F? So I'm just gonna just say else here. Okay, that did not format out exactly the way I wanted it, by the way. I really wanted it on a separate line like that. I don't know why I thought I had this thing configured so that the things always lined up, but maybe I did not. Okay, so this basically tells me that if I put in a score, it'll tell me whether it's an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F. Okay, so the range problem typically is a set of these nested guys, plus a trailing else at the very end. Okay, and you can use a trailing else to see if you're outside the normal bounds. Like none of the above kind of a scenario. Okay, this is probably a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this thing up again in just a few.